country music fans. What a blessing it is to reach you guys in the airwaves today. On the call with me, I have a bit of a country music legend. I'm very excited. This is Jason Michael Carroll. How are you today, Jason?
I am good, and I think I can on. Do I wear the moniker legend? That's awesome. Yeah, that's cool.
Think so. I mean, you think back, your career spans, almost 2 decades, maybe even more than that,
Yeah.
of just phenomenal country music. And I think that is deemable of being a legend. If nothing else, it's putting you on the right track to being a legend. Okay, but today we're talking about some of your new stuff. You have a brand new song out, an awesome collaboration with Petey Pablo. Oh my gosh. When I saw that come across my email chain, I was like, what? But Nothing But Country is the name of the track. First of all, I see that you and Petey are really good friends. Let's talk a little bit about how you two came to know each other, and then we'll get into a little bit of the song.
We wound up years ago when I was home off the road. I'd go to the Ale House in Wake Forest, North Carolina. It was kind of just a place we would all like to go hang out. And one night while I was there, I remember the waiter came over and said, "Jason, I love your music." I'm like, thank you. He goes, "Hey, have you met Petey yet?" I'm like, Petey. Like what? He goes, and he points over there, and then I realize who he's talking about. I'm like, oh wait, Petey Pablo's here. And so, I mean, obviously, I'm from Houston, Texas. I lived there till I was 7. We moved to North Carolina, so I was familiar with North Carolina, raise up, take your shirt off, twist around your hands, spin like a helicopter. Yeah, I was familiar. So I went up to him and said, "Hey, man, big fan, love your stuff." He's cool, thank you. And we get to talking and stuff. And I told him who I was, and he actually started following me right then at the restaurant. And so became friends. We exchanged numbers. I remember when I was on the road for a while. At that point, we were really busy. I'd come home off the road, and my wife, I'd have been gone for a while. So then at like 3 a.m., my phone would ring while we were in bed asleep. And she's like, hit me like, "Hey, your phone's ringing." I'm like, hmm, hmm. And she's like, "Your phone's ringing." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "Your phone's ringing." Finally, I'd realized where I'm at and what's going on. And I said, "Hey, baby, it's Petey." And then she's like, "No, who's calling you?" I said, "Baby, it's Petey." And she said, "What?" I said, "Baby, he butt dials me. I don't know why. Like, I don't know if I'm the first in his contact list or what's going on." And she's like, "No, who's calling you?" I fumble through the dark, grab my phone. I answer the phone, and literally she hears this in the background, and I'm yelling, "Petey!" At like 3 a.m. in the morning. My house is dead quiet. "Petey!" And then finally he answers the phone. "What up, dog?" I'm like, "You called me, dude." And so then we would talk for a while. And that's literally the only time we ever talked on the phone for like the first little while. And then every now and again we'd text each other, "Hey, happy Merry Christmas, happy Easter," kind of stuff. And, and every time we'd see each other, we ran into each other at Dale House so many times. And every time we see each other, he'd say, "Let's do something, dog." I'm like, "Hey, I'm down, let's do something." Sang traditional country music. I was not sure like when we would get that opportunity. We finished the record. Long story short, I'll try to
Yeah.
wrap it up. We wound up finishing the record last
No,
September,
you're fine.
and it would have been done. I got the bright idea in October to reach out to a very well known Nashville kind of superstar artist slash guitar player and have them put a track on one of my songs. I asked, they said, the day to day person said, yes, he would love to do it. I wound up thinking, this is going to be great, awesome. And I wound up, she said, he can't do it right now. He's going to come back and do it in a couple weeks. So, just stay, well, give us some time. Sure. Every 2 or 3 weeks, I'd reach out to him, say, "Hey, any progress? Not yet. Okay, any progress? Not yet." So that went on through February, and
Wow.
in February they said he can't do it, and I'm like, so then I was heartbroken, and I'm thinking like,
Yeah.
man, this sucks. And so I wound up kind of regrouping. But had he done that recording in October when I asked him, I wouldn't have written this song in December and had the opportunity to put on this new record. And so my grandbaby came up to my office. Sometimes I'll my Nugget is what I call her. Nugget. Whenever she gets fussy, sometimes I'll bring her to my office and I'll open up one of my DAWs, Ableton usually, and I'll pull up a drum loop or drum track and let her hammer out drums. So then we'll build
Fun.
drum tracks together. And she and I actually built this drum track. And when I would hit play, she'd start doing this, and I was like, I don't care what anybody else says, it's a hit.
Yes. Yes.
So I wrote lyrics to it and then thought, maybe Petey'd be a good option on this one. And so I reached out and he tracked on it. It was really cool.
That is just It's so crazy how the world works because it's like you finally have something that's come together and you have the perfect person to put on it. I'm just in your back pocket, literally, or I guess in his back pocket because he's the one who kept butt dialing you. Anyway, um, I love that though. Okay, talk about the studio time for this song. If you wrote it back in December, it's now, what is it, September, August? Oh, yeah, okay, September. How long did it take you to record it? Did you get to work with Petey like in the studio together? Was there any time like that? Or are you guys just recording it separately?
No, we recorded separately. He did I've got a studio at my house. He has one at his house. Now, what's really cool about this song is I actually we were never in the studio together, but I tracked, and this is the crazy thing about technology today. The drums that Nugget and I developed and built are what I used in the songs. It's so the drummer I programmed, the synths and stuff I programmed. The only thing live in that track besides me and Petey singing is the acoustic guitar, the electric guitar, and I played both of those. And my buddy Enda Scahill, who is a world-renowned banjo player, I reached out to him. He lives in Ireland, and I messaged him on WhatsApp and said, "Hey, can you track on this song for me?" And so I sent him the track, and he sent me back that loop that you hear, that banjo you hear in the chorus is Enda playing. So everything is programmed, everything. So it was all electronic, and that's it worked out great, you know.
That is just so great how the world works these days with technology. We talked about this a little bit before we hopped on the call. Listeners out there, Jason and I had like a 20-minute conversation that I'm really sad that you didn't get to hear. It really was. We talked a lot about just in the internet and technology and how it's great and how it's sometimes awful. And we talked about media and how great and awful it also can be.
Yep, yep.
But no, this is a perfect example of bringing different genres, different cultures, different, I mean, countries. You got, your friend all the way over there playing the banjo for you. I just, that's incredible to hear
You know
all
what's
about
really
that.
cool though? I think this
Yeah.
song in particular, when I started writing the lyrics to it, and the reason I thought of Petey for it was I got the first verse and the chorus down, and then I was kind of lost on what to do with the second chorus. I reached out to another friend of mine in Nashville to actually see if he wanted to jump on it. We never could line our schedules up to work on it. Um, while I was doing that, I got to thinking about one of the things. The reason I brought Petey in was because I think people get lost in the fact that country music is not a genre. It is. They think country music is, oh well, country music is what they play on the old station over here, and anything other than that is not country music. Well, I think country music's a lifestyle. I think that everybody
Yes.
say that they're from the country, whatever your country is. Now, I grew up on an 82-acre tobacco farm. Sounds country. People don't know, and I think they'd be surprised to find out that every surrounding town around the county I grew up in was an urban town. So on the weekends, my country was literally going to Henderson, North Carolina, cruising Dabney Drive from the car wash down to Walmart, listening to everything from George Strait to Petey Pablo and Tupac. I mean, and so I would argue that I'm just as country as anybody else, and I think that I think that people get lost on that. I think that they try to claim something and they say, "Well, you're not it." Well, I don't. I think we need to pump the brakes on that a little bit. I think country is country, and anybody that wants to argue that Petey Pablo's not country, he's from. I know the neck of the woods he's from. He's country. So it's man, it's really cool. What I really love about this record is being able to put something together with somebody, a friend of mine that I've known for almost 20 years, and then also showcase the fact that this guy knows what he's talking about, and it doesn't seem forced. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? It doesn't seem like
Yes.
it. Sometimes in country music, you see collaborations like this that just seem like, oh, they're trying too hard.
Yeah.
And this one does not feel like that at all. And I know I'm biased, but I really think it was just a natural thing. I've got 60-something-year-old farmers that still drive tractors that love this song and think it's the coolest thing they've heard, and I think that's great. So
Yes. Because it does really mix like a great blend of old traditional sound with your amazing voice
thank you.
meets new. Yeah, of course. New with the Petey Pablo flow. I feel like there's just a lot going on and it offers a lot for people. But like you said, it's authentic. I feel like it's like you said, it's not forced. It's something that just, kind of works. And that's amazing. Yeah. And this new song is coming off of your album that's going to drop in 2026. Anthem. And I was just telling you for the listeners out there, I don't know much about the album other than the song. I do know, however, that it features some of your family, maybe a little bit of Nugget, Who else is featured on this album for you?
Nugget is featured on there. She's on there. She's on 2 different tracks actually.
That's so cool.
And my kids are featured on it, which is really important for me to do. There's one song in particular, one of my daughter's story. She is singing harmonies with me on a song that I wrote called "Feeling," that I wrote. I'm very proud. I mentioned James Kelly earlier, who I wrote with today. James and I wrote "Feeling" together with Cameron Havens, but feeling I asked Story to sing on, and it's a very there's something on this record for everybody. If you don't like the Petey Pablo song, which I just give it a chance, I'm telling you that the song is country and it's a fun song to listen to.
Yes.
Uh, there's something on the other end of the spectrum too, which I think Feeling covers that side of it, which is very so old school Dean Dillon kind of sound, George Strait country, which
Mm-hmm.
has that kind of vibe to it. Actually, when I wrote that song, I called my wife into the living room and I said, "Is this stupid?" Because I wasn't sure if the chorus is, "It's feeling like that feeling that you get when you start feeling like that feeling we were feeling is over. I
I
don't
love
know
that.
and you can't say why we're both feeling this way, but it feels like we ain't feeling no closer. Who's at fault or which one wins doesn't matter in the end. 'Cause we both lose if it gets any colder. It's feeling like that feeling that you get when you start feeling like that feeling we were feeling is over." And so, yeah, so I was proud of that one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think just that, I know it's not an innuendo. I'm trying to think of the word that I'm thinking of. Nuance. I think the nuance of like having all of those feelings come over and wash over, and that's genius. Oh my gosh. That is
So,
just,
so,
yeah.
and then another song I had featured on here, and this is one that I needed to get on this record. Back in 2017, Tom Petty passed away. I was a huge Tom Petty fan. My daughter and I, my oldest daughter and I were going through some things that I was a little upset about that she wasn't speaking to me, and wasn't coming to the house to visit, and it broke my heart because I felt like I've always made decisions based on my kids. And so I was really dealing with that when my buddy called and said that Tom Petty passed away. I was sitting in my office and I just made a crown and I was sitting there looking at my computer, and he called and told me that, and I kinda took my breath away, and I sat back up in my chair. Do you remember those bracelets people used to wear, the "What Would Jesus Do" bracelets?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I sat up in my chair and I said, "What would Tom Petty do?" And I said, "He'd write a song about it." And so that day, I started this, and I actually finished I got close to finishing that night, I finished it the next day. But, I wrote a song called "Pretty Wild Thing," and I wanted to write it in case my daughter or any of my kids weren't ever speaking to me again, they would at least know that I was there, either physically or not there physically, just in spirit, that I would be there for them if they needed me. And so I wrote the song called "Pretty Wild Thing." Fast forward a few years, I didn't realize 7 years from then, I'd become friends with Steve Ferrone, who was Tom Petty's drummer with the Heartbreakers for 25 years. Steve and I became friends, and I asked him while I was putting this record together, I said, "Would you mind?" I wanted to track the whole record. He said he couldn't do it. They were on tour, but he said that he would track that song for me. So I actually have Steve Ferrone from the Heartbreakers playing on a song that I wrote the day Tom Petty passed away, which is pretty, I mean, surreal. And then
Yes.
on top of that, a daughter that was the inspiration for it, even though I wrote it about all my kids, the daughter that I was the inspiration for, Savannah, sings harmony with me on it. Nugget, if you ever listen to Tom Petty, American Girl, he does this thing at the beginning throughout the song where he goes kind of thing. Uh, like what he's
Yeah.
doing this mouth loop thing. I got inspired by that. So I put this loop on here. I went, and then the second one, I laid Nugget's laugh on it. So you hear like throughout the entire song. And so that's the second song Nuggets on. Yeah.
Gosh. I think that's just, I don't know. I think that says a lot about you as a man and an artist to be able to personalize your music in such a way that makes it more meaningful to you as well as the listeners. That is, I can't wait to hear that. Oh my gosh. That's
I'm
so
so stoked
exciting.
about this record. It's going to be a fun one. You know, there was a lot of other things in this record. Another thing that I like about it is I put if you listen to 90s hip hop the way I did, there were things that they had in there, and country music never really embraced it. It was called interludes. So you have these interludes on this record that you listen to. One of my favorite ones that did it was a band called Jodeci from the '90s. Jodeci gave us a couple of great artists like Devante, and then it gave us Casey and JoJo, who people would probably know more. Casey and JoJo had their own hit songs, but they also featured on songs with Tupac and things like that. Um, and if you listen to that, the Hotel, the Show, the After Party by Jodeci, you're you're in a hotel, you're in the show, the after party, and throughout the entire record, you're hearing like little breakups of like them clanking beer bottles. Oh, they're in the hotel partying. Oh, this is at the show. Oh, this is afterwards.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do something similar to that. Take people on a journey throughout this entire record. So the record actually opens up with an interlude, doing a faux interview with my buddy Mike Wheelis, who was my very first radio interview ever. Before I ever got signed to a record deal, he actually called me up. We were opening up for Neil McCoy at the Long Branch, and he called me and said, "Hey, do you want to do a radio interview with Neil McCoy?" And it was my very first radio interview ever. And I said, "Please." So I remember him calling me, and so the very first thing you hear on this record is when it sounds like a guy walking to his truck. He gets in his truck, cranks it up, and then you hear the radio come on, and my buddy Mike Wheeler starts talking. So it's pretty awesome.
Wow. I think that's just, again, that like personalization of you throughout your career, bringing it back to that first radio interview. I mean, that's wow. I think that's just going to peak. I love the idea of kind of setting the scene with these
Mhm.
interludes in the introduction, like you were just talking about. I think that's going to set up the album for like a really great compilation of I don't know, success. I think
I hope so.
it's
Yeah.
going to be so good. Yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit more in the album itself. So you talked about Pretty Wild Things and how you wrote it back 2017, and then you wrote Nothing But Country December of last year. Is that about the span of timeline or span of time that's been, since you started writing, or did you just kind of pick and choose in your catalog which songs you wanted to go on this album? Were you writing specifically for one album? Tell me how that worked.
So kinda. You would think 2017 was a long time ago. That had to be the oldest song on here. It's
I
not.
feel like it's not a long time ago. So
And
much has happened, but still,
back
gosh.
in 20, I think 11, I want to say maybe 2012. Buddy of mine, some friends of ours, we wound up writing a song together. No, wait, it was. It, dang, when was that? Had to have been. Yeah, it had to have been around then. I wrote with some friends of mine, Marcus Kaiser and Johnny Johnny Montgomery. Those guys, we were sitting there one day. I just got back to Nashville, and then my wife and I had a little bit of a spiff before I left home. And I said, "You know what's crazy, guys?" I said, "I'm on the road. I'm tired. I go on the road. I'm sick of traveling. I get back home, and the first thing I do when I go in the house and set my suitcase down and go back to put my pajama britches on and go back to the lit kitchen and grab a cold beer out of the fridge and go sit down on the couch and turn the TV on, and everything's right with the world. And then my wife wants to come in there, stand between me and the TV, and go, 'Where are we going?' And I'm like, 'I'm not going anywhere. I just got home.' And then that's when I realized that I've been traveling, but she hasn't. And so she's like ready to go. And then one time in particular, I told the story. I said, so I'm sitting there thinking I won the fight. She's like, okay. She walks away. And I'm thinking, yeah, everything's right. I've turned on some sports. I've got my TV, got my beer, good. And about 5, 10 minutes later, she comes out of the bedroom wearing a pair of jeans and she's going somewhere. And I'm looking at her like, where are you going? And she's like, I'm going out. And I'm like, so look at her. I look at the TV. I look at my beer, and I'm like, "Where are we going?" And so I told this story to my buddies, and Marcus looks at me and he goes, "I am so glad you told that story." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because up until right then, I had the stupidest idea for a song 2 weeks ago, and I've been afraid to pitch it in a show in a songwriting session." And I said, "What is it?" He said, "It's hard to argue with jeans like that." And I was like,
Ooh.
so that was where that came from, which Marcus called me a couple days ago. He said, "Dude, you've got to pitch this to Sydney Sweeney right now with this whole American Eagle thing."
No.
Anyways, but that's how that song came about, and that made the record. That it didn't make the previous records. I'll be honest with you. I write songs all the time. I have a song that I'm sitting on that from my last EP session that I did right before I shut everything down when I had my breakdown, and I think it's might be one of my biggest hits yet. And I just remembered after we recorded this record that I hadn't put that out yet.
My gosh. Because it's just sitting there.
It's literally, it's done, it's produced, it's finished. The song's a hit. We play it live at shows. I forgot I had a recording of it, and yeah. So, yeah, well, yeah, I'll get
It'll
it out.
I was gonna say, I feel like the title Anthem, there's gonna be a deluxe version, so maybe you can just throw it on the deluxe version and then
It
it'll be a
could
fun.
be. It could be. Yeah, that one probably might make that because it is a great song and everybody's been begging for it. And I totally forgot until we finished this record. And like, wait, yeah. So, hmm
Well, talking about that and talking about the songwriting and I don't know, like you were saying, you have so many great songs. Is there, and I'm sure there have been, I'm sure there's been a song that you've had to put away and come back to because it just wasn't coming together. Do you have a song like that that you just were not getting it, like needed help with it, or I call it a labor of love song because eventually at the end it comes together and it's one of your favorites. Do you have a song like that?
well, Alyssa Lies Turn It was one for love that for sure. It took me 2 years to write that
Really?
song. I wrote the first verse and the chorus in like an hour and a half. And then whittled that down over a week's time to the point where the first verse sat. And then um, for 2 years, I would come back to that song, pick it up. I mean, I didn't have a record deal or anything, and I'd go through my notebooks. Oh, and I'd sit there play a little bit, and I'd try to write something strong as the first verse. And I'm like, nope. And I'd close the notebook, go away. I did that for 2 years and then finally finished it. But on this record, there's a song that I heard in my meetings. I go to meetings for some of my things that I've got going on. I do a daily meeting just to make sure I'm not doing something stupid. And in the meetings, the guy that brought me to the meetings is another musician here in town, and he would call me after like probably twice or we go every day, but he would call me like twice a week, say, "Hey, are you good? Do you understand what we're talking about in the meeting and your head's clear?" I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I'm figuring it out." Yeah. And he said, "Did you hear what so and so said?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude." And I was like, and then he would go, "That guy's really going through it." And I'd say, "Yeah, did you hear what he said after his share or during his share?" And he's what? He said, "Blah, blah, blah." And he said, "Yeah." He goes, "That's a song title." He said, "Jason, stop. You can't we're in a meeting. You're supposed to be paying attention. You're not supposed to be listening for song titles." I said, "No, dude, I'm trying. I really am." So the next week he called me, exact same scenario. Bam. He's like, "Stop." Well, the third week he called me, and before he asked me anything, I answered, I said, "Hey, what up, dude?" He said, "If you tell me you heard a song title today, I'm hanging up." And I didn't tell him because I heard one of the best song titles that day. A buddy of ours that's in the program, he said that he decided to throw everything he'd been working for away. He'd been sick and tired of life kicking him around. And
Yeah.
this guy was in the program when I got there. And so he said that he walked out to one bar. He was going to order a drink. He said he raised his hand, and before the bartender got to him, this guy across the bar yells his name, and he looks, and it's a guy from our meeting having lunch there. So he's
Oh.
like, "Okay, well, not here. Okay, so great." And then he
Mm-hmm.
said he left that one, went to another bar. He said he looked around real good at the next bar to make sure nobody was there that didn't. And he said the only person in there was a guy he used to drink with. And he said that when he raised his hand to order a drink, the bartender was on his way to him. And the guy that he used to drink with looks at him and says, "Hey, man, I heard you're in the program now. How's that going?" And he said everywhere he went that day, there was God again. And so
Oh.
I wrote a song called There Goes God Again on this album. Now, I wrote the chorus in like 20 minutes. The next week, I had co-writes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in Nashville. Monday, went to a co-write. They said, "Hey, you got any ideas?" And a standard co-write, you're pitching ideas back and forth until one lands. I pitched it to every one of those. Monday, "Yeah, sounds good, but let's write this." Tuesday, "Yeah, that's okay. But how about this one?" Wednesday, "I had this idea." Okay. Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
same thing. Friday, I was writing with a buddy named Lil Skinny. He was on American Idol.
Little Skinny. I know Skinny, yeah.
So Skinny's a good friend of mine, and we were sitting there, and when we got in the room, he said, "You got any ideas?" And I sat there, I did not want to say it because I'd already been shot down all week. I'm like, "Well, I mean, I had this one." He said, "Let's hear it." And I played the chorus to There Goes God Again. And then we both sat there quietly for a minute. And then I went, "Well, we don't have to write that or anything." And he's like, "No, no, I like it. I like it." "No, no." I said, "Dude, do you have another idea? Let's write that." And so I found myself trying to talk him out of writing it because I'd already been shot down so many
You already
times.
convinced. Yeah.
And he said, "No, let's write it." And we wrote this in about an hour and a half. And it's probably one of the most powerful songs on the record. It is such I drew from what I've heard in the meetings, from no matter where life puts us, God can still get us out of it if we rely on him, we're able, we get out of our own way. And um the second verse, when I was at home, when I started going through everything in my life, which I went through some struggles. My wife left, my kids quit talking to me for a while. She called me an alcoholic and walked out, and it hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
And I angry at first. I kind of was arguing, and I stayed in the house for like a month and a half, didn't go anywhere, canceled gigs, stayed at home. I remember being in that house and thinking that they'd be better off I wasn't here. And that second verse captures of There Goes God Again, captures that feeling. The day that that was really hitting me, that thought was hitting me, my daughter was in Germany with her husband, stationed out there in at one of the army bases out there. He's is where he's stationed, and that day that that feeling was really hitting me, when nobody was talking to me, everybody had left me alone, that feeling was just right there on my shoulder creeping in, and my daughter called to see how I was doing. And so that second verse is literally that story. And so it was a really powerful song for me, and I'm really proud of the way it turned out.
Yes. Oh, that I'm so glad you told me that story. And amen to that, because I feel like a lot of people experience those feelings of just desperation. I mean, I don't know of another way to explain it, but that's, you get to what feels like the lowest of the low, and something steps in. God steps in to intervene and make you feel like everything's going to be okay.
So
Just, gosh.
that chorus was what ripped that one was, and it was there goes God again when we got no one else. He's there to fix the mess we made when we do things ourselves. You think by now we'd learn how good a friend he's been. Every time we think we find there's no way out, and then there goes God again. Yeah, and so that's where that came from. So I'm really proud of the way that song turned out.
Yes, I love that. I'm gonna take that little sound clip that you just made, and I'm gonna put it as a ringtone because I feel
I
like I
like
need
it.
the constant reminder. I feel like I do. My goodness. I'm so excited that you talked with me about this album today. I'm just like pumped. I'm so pumped to hear all of it. Before we hop off the call, I know that you have tons of things going on. Do you have any performances coming up, or any other things going on that we want to tell the listeners about?
Yeah, I've got a lot of things coming up. I'm actually going to be in Sacramento next following week, doing an event for some of my veterans out there. I've been working with this charity called Golf and Guitars for several years. I think this is my 16th out of 17 years they've done it. And the one year I missed, I was overseas playing for our men and women in Bahrain and Djibouti, Africa, and Guam, and those places. I am gonna go out there and play with PGA Hope, and I've got 4 new veterans they're pairing me up with that they're gonna help take care of, so I'm pretty excited about that. And then, we're gonna hope and pray that this record does well, because it'll increase the touring, and I love touring, I love going out talking to people, and I love playing music. So if this record does what we're hoping it will, and it seems to be on its way to doing, then maybe we'll see a lot more dates pop up on there. But we just launched a new website, jasonmichaelcarroll.com. I revamped the whole thing, and I just for the first time launched my first online store. I've always been super crazy, like OCD about, like, if the shirt doesn't feel good and I won't wear it, I'm not going to sell it. So
You.
yeah, and even if that costs me more money, and so that was always an argument I had with vendors. I was so OCD about this that everything I designed on this store, I ordered samples of first. And I told my wife, I said, if these things suck when they get here, I'm burning the whole thing down. So they were great when we got them, and the shirts feel good, and the coffee mugs look cool, and they're quality. So I'm like, all right, let's go with it. So yeah.
Listeners out there, Nothing But Country dropped on September 15th. Jason Michael Carroll has his upcoming album, Anthem, dropping in 2026. So amazing to talk with you today. Thank you so much for spending time with me, Jason.
How was our quality on here? Does it sound okay?
Think it does. Because I'll get some little snipping and then doing stuff. So it should be.
Yeah.
It should.
Well, yeah. So how much time do we have? Are you done?
No, please give me whatever you you want to show us. Let's see. Let's see.
All right. So with everything going on right now in the world, all right. And I don't know if this is. Can you hear that?
Yes, I can. That's perfect.
Okay. So with everything going on in the world right now, a buddy of mine texted me last night at like probably 9:30, and he said, Jason, he said, I just heard your radio interview that you did. I did it a couple days ago. And he said, a song that I played live is more poignant now than it ever has been. And so I wrote a song with my buddy Garrett Bradford. He's a Texas artist.
Love Garrett. Yeah, one of my favorites. Yeah.
And Garrett and I wrote this song. Garrett messaged me one day. He said, "Hey man, pick a song, pick one." And he sent me 6 song ideas. Now Garrett's a sweetheart. In Nashville, no one does that because everybody's worried about stealing ideas. Garrett sent me
Yes.
6 ideas, said, "Pick one, Hoss." So I
What a
was
good
in North
guy. Yeah.
Carolina and I picked one that my uncles used to tell me all the time. All of my uncles and my dad played football. And so when we fell as little kids, they would say, "Get up, brush it off, heroes play hurt." And one of the ideas that Garrett sent was a song called Whatever Happened to Heroes. And with everything that happened this past week, and I'm not going to get into it because it's just disheartening.
It is.
My buddy last night texted me and said this song is more poignant now than ever. So this is a song on the record that I'm pretty excited about. It's one I wrote with Garrett called Whatever Happened to Heroes. Tell me whatever happened to heroes. The men who rode tall and shot straight. And just when you thought the outlaw had won, they'd ride in saving the day. But the world's not a black and white western like we watch back on Grandpa's TV. It's all burning down, the Duke's in the ground, and outlaws are making the laws in D.C. I still like to think that the cowboys are holed up, bandaging wounds, making plans to return. One of these nights they'll ride in clouds of gun smoke, giving those bad guys what they deserve. It could happen, I suppose. But tell me whatever happened to heroes. Maybe it's time to grow up and stop thinking that hell's gonna come. Roll up our boots, do what we have to, and chase that sunset when the battles are won. I still like to think that the cowboys are holed up, bandaging wounds, making plans to return. One of these nights they'll ride in clouds of gun smoke, giving those bad guys what they deserve. It could happen, I suppose. But tell me whatever happened to heroes. I still like to think that the cowboys are holed up, bandaging wounds, making plans to return. One of these nights they'll ride in clouds of gun smoke, giving those bad guys what they deserve. It could happen, I suppose. But tell me whatever happened to heroes. It's up to us, I suppose. Maybe we're next in line to be heroes.
That's going to make me cry. You said you weren't going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about it just a little bit because my husband and I have been wrestling a lot with this idea of stepping up after everything that's happened this week and just being a shining light when
Mhm.
other people need it.
Yep.
And I feel like that song, thank you so, so much for playing that today because we need more music like that. We need more ideas like that. We need more accountability. We need more people who are able to just be vulnerable and brave enough to stand up and take up for one another
Well,
like a hero
if
would.
this past week showed you anything, is we need heroes more than ever because the evil is out there. It's unprecedented, and it blows my mind. From the stabbing in Charlotte, that's those 3 hours from my house, to Charlie Kirk. It's a horrible. We need it more than ever. So
Absolutely. That song perfectly encapsulates this idea. Please make that a single. I feel like that needs to be heard. It needs to be heard on radio play all over the world because that's that uniting idea of we can be heroes too. Like it
mhm.
doesn't have to be, you know, someone with a microphone. It can be just anybody who's brave enough to take a stand.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that today. That's Misty. Anyway, oh my gosh, Jason, I can't wait to hear the rest of this album. You've given me such a great gift today. So thank you for blessing us, me, the listeners, with this wonderful gift.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Hon.
Absolutely. And y'all heard about it here with Lee and Coda Country. Y'all have a fantastic day and go be a hero. Go do it. Thanks.